I want to start with something you've probably seen recently, maybe in your own home, maybe in someone else's. The elf on the shelf. Now, every December, millions of households place this small figurine somewhere inside their home. The rules are simple. The elf watches the children, and each night it reports back to Santa on who has been naughty and who has been nice. But here's what I find striking. The elf never actually does anything. It doesn't explain consequences. It doesn't punish anyone. It doesn't even move. All it does is just sit there, quietly establishing one thing, the possibility of being seen. And that turns out to be enough. Kids don't only behave when the elf is visible. They start behaving all the time, just in case. Now, Santa works the same way. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. You never actually see Santa, do you? And that's the point. Authority doesn't need to appear. It only needs to be believed. Now, this doesn't disappear with childhood. It matures with us. Now, for a long time, we imagined surveillance as something external. Cameras mounted above us, corporations tracking us, governments watching from a distance. Now, that fear wasn't wrong, but it wasn't the whole story either. In the late 18th century, philosopher Jeremy Bentham proposed a prison design called the panopticon. Now, in the panopticon, prisoners were arranged around a central watchtower from which guards could see into every cell, while the prisoners themselves could never see into the tower. They never knew when they were being watched. Now, Bentham realized something. The uncertainty itself was enough. When you might be watched at any given moment, you start acting as though you're always watched. The prisoner becomes his own guard. Now, 2 centuries later, historian Michel Foucault noticed that this method of compliance had escaped the prison entirely, spreading into workplaces, schools, the entirety of modern life itself. Today, the prison's watchtower doesn't belong to a single authority. Today, we all stand in the tower. We watch each other constantly, and just as constantly, we watch ourselves through the eyes we imagine around us. We are no longer just simply being watched. We have trained to watch ourselves. We've become both guard and prisoner at the same time. Now, I notice this in myself all the time. It's the pause before speaking, the instinct to soften an opinion or abandon it because I've already imagined the consequences. I don't need someone to correct me. I've already imagined the reaction. I imagine the reaction before I take the action. And once you do that often enough, imagination replaces enforcement. Now, adjusting yourselves for different situations isn't new or wrong either. Sociologist Erving Goffman argued decades ago that we present different versions of ourselves in different contexts. And this is pretty healthy. Who you are at work isn't necessarily who you are with your friends. And who you are with your friends isn't necessarily who you are with your partner. And this flexibility isn't deception. It's social coordination. But Goffman assumes something that's becoming harder to maintain. The existence of a backstage, a space where no single version of you had to work everywhere at once. But online, your friends, your family, strangers you never meet, every audience is in the same room, and the room is always full. Context disappears while visibility remains, and you don't know who's watching at any given moment. Performance used to depend on the room, but today, the room is everywhere. So you're probably thinking, the obvious response to all of this is, just stop performing. Be yourself. Be authentic, right? But notice what that actually asks of you. Sociologists have been documenting what they call an authenticity revolution, but not because authenticity is freeing us from performance, because authenticity has become the new demand. To be seen, you're expected to stand out, cultivate a personal brand, prove that you're different from everybody else. But the difference you're encouraged to show has limits. Authenticity is welcome as long as it stays easy. easy to consume, easy to applaud, and easy to move on away from. It's spontaneity that feels alive, but leaves everything intact after. It's vulnerability that doesn't really disturb the room and resolves itself quickly. It's rawness that feels risky without actually risking too much. When authenticity becomes demanded, it doesn't free us from performance. It moves performance inside. You stop asking, who am I? And you start asking, how will this read? And when this internal calculation becomes constant, when your self-presentation is optimized in advance, relationships begin to change. Interactions become more frequent, but they grow less intimate. Conversations become smoother, they have less friction, but they become thinner. Connections between people becomes increasingly governed by caution. Your life can look full and still feel strangely hollow. You can be surrounded by people and still feel profoundly alone, because being seen is not the same as being known. And this doesn't just hurt us individually. Innovation requires visible failure. Someone has to be willing to try something uncertain where other people can see. Democracy requires public disagreement. People who can argue, be wrong, and change their mind in front of each other. Learning requires saying the wrong thing and surviving it. But when people learn to smooth and soften their thoughts and actions in anticipation of a reaction, those capacities erode. Not because people stop showing up, but because people stop risking anything when they do. That's what performance becomes. And that's what I'm doing right now. I've rehearsed this talk many times. I rehearsed this talk 5 minutes ago. I know it's being recorded. I know it will be judged. And that anticipation has shaped every sentence you've heard so far. But this is a stage. Performance is supposed to come with it. The question I keep coming back to is, when do we get to stop? I don't think the answer is authenticity. I think the answer is simpler and harder. Stop optimizing. Let it be awkward. Let it land wrong. Let it take longer to explain. Try something you might fail at where other people can see. Care about something before you know whether it's safe to care. Risk being misunderstood. Let sincerity remain unprotected. What would you try if you weren't afraid of being seen trying? Who might you be if you stop rehearsing who you think you're supposed to be? Now, this system doesn't ask us to be cruel. It only asks us to be quiet. Quiet about what we want and quiet about what we're willing to try. And nothing meaningful has ever been built by people who waited until they were ready. So if there's a freedom still available to us, it's not the freedom to be authentic. It's the freedom to be unfinished. Because the greatest risk is not being judged, is being so afraid of being seen that we forgot how to live.